Last week, a man was beaten to death with a hammer in his home. As news of the murder spread, his friends gathered outside his house to remember him and then to begin the process of burying him. At the man's funeral, though, the local pastor leading the service turned from eulogizing the man who had been killed to instead railing against homosexuality.
We are not going to promote gays, but what I'm saying is you should repent. We have not come here to fight. We have not come here to fight.
As the dead man's friends objected and the pastor shouted at them and the funeral grew chaotic, the pastor made clear that he would not be part of helping the dead man rest in peace. He would not conduct the burial in the cemetery a couple hundred yards away. So the man's friends, they do it themselves. Look, they lift his casket and they themselves carry it to the grave and they bury him themselves. They are friends and pallbearers and ministers all in one, all for one. Without the official pastor, the funeral becomes this sort of amazing scene. Former Anglican bishop who was excommunicated in his country for favoring gay rights, he takes over the service right here in this moment that Reuters caught on film. Watch this.
You may be different from me. Myself, I'm straight. I'm not LGBT. But I've known these people who are LGBT. I respect them for what they are. And I believe they are going to heaven. Amen. Like you others, they are going to heaven. Amen. If they don't believe, that's another matter. Yes. But if they are believers, don't be discouraged. I know people have been discouraged, even not going to church, because they are being abused. As I've found today, people are abusing them. Please don't be discouraged. God created you. God is on your side. And God, this is the gospel I'm preaching.
God created you. God is on your side. Those are fighting words in a certain sense. They are at least words of courage for a man like the one who was buried by his friends that day, last Friday. David Cato, the man who was killed, was one of the most outspoken activists for gay rights in his country. A colleague of his tells us he'd been beaten and arrested more than once. His right eye didn't work properly anymore, the friend told us. He was trying to get surgery for a shoulder that had been dislocated in an earlier attack. Recently, he had moved several miles outside the capital city in his country, hoping for peace and safety in the rural district that he moved to, which is where he was killed. On the day David Cato was bludgeoned to death, neighbors say that 3 people drove up to his new home in a small car. One of them got out and a while later came back carrying a large black bag. At first, police said Mr. Cato might have been killed in a robbery attempt, but before they even had a suspect in custody, they were already ruling out an obvious possible motive.
I want to make it very clear, it is not linked to him being an activist of the sexual minorities.
Oh, no, couldn't be that. Whatever it is, it's not that. We haven't even really investigated yet, but we're already sure he wasn't killed because he was the most high-profile gay man in the country. David Cato's picture had appeared on the cover of a local paper as somebody who ought to be hanged for being gay. He knew he was in danger. His colleague we spoke with told us Mr. Cato sent him a number of emails about threats he had received in the months before he died. He also spoke with NPR last year about who had made his country such a scary place to be.
In my view, it's the religious right. These were from America. They came here and saying that if they leave homosexuals to be around, they are spoiling what they call the traditional marriage. So they came up saying that we, gay people, were recruiting children into homosexuality.
That part about the religious right from America, the Americans who came there, he's talking about the American evangelicals flying into Uganda to address members of parliament there at anti-gay conferences, where the anti-gay Americans told the Ugandans to not only fear the gays, but they told them that the gay can be cured.
If your definition of homosexuality is being able to do whatever you want to, and that you should be able to go and engage in sex with another person, and that because of that, the disease you have is going to spread to that person, and they're going to take it home and give it to their wife, how much tolerance should we have for that? We should have zero tolerance for that. You should not be able to do that.
What you just heard was anti-gay American activist Scott Lively addressing a homosexuality conference in Uganda, urging the Ugandans not to tolerate homosexuality. Another American activist, Richard Cohen, he dispatched a staffer of his to Uganda to address the issue and to distribute copies of his dubious Cure the Gay training materials. You might remember Richard Cohen, our old friend with his tennis racket, the guy who insists that gay people can be cured somehow by doing things like this. The guy who denied on camera to me what was in his own Cure the Gays book when I asked him about it last year. American anti-gay quack Richard Cohen sent his big idea that people can be cured of being gay. He sent that big idea to Uganda. And look, if you show up in another country and you call yourself an expert and you sell this notion that gay people can get over being gay, then people in that country who are inclined to believe that might also believe that they can force their gay citizens to change into straight ones. They can force them, maybe under the threat of execution. This man, David Bahati, believes that. He's a member of the Ugandan parliament. He's the main author of the Kill the Gays bill in that country, which, after visits from American anti-gay activists, was written and submitted to parliament. It establishes penalties up to and including execution for the crime of being gay. Despite reports that the bill had been withdrawn and that the killing part was being taken out of it, the bill has not been withdrawn, and it still includes execution as a penalty. The reason this murder is an American story is that the Kill the Gays bill author, David Bahati, is connected not just to America's anti-gay religious quacks with their tennis rackets and their bogus research. He's also connected to The Family, which organizes prayer breakfasts in Uganda and which in the past has welcomed Mr. Bahati to America, where its C Street house in Washington has been home to several conservative members of Congress. The journalist who has covered The Family most closely, Jeff Charlotte, says that David Bahati is The Family's key man in the Ugandan parliament, and that that American connection for Mr. Bahati has been key to his rise in politics. Last year, Mr. Bahati appeared on our show to defend his American-inspired Kill the Gays bill. He told us that the U.S. and other countries have sent $15 million into his country for the purposes of recruiting children to be gay. He told us on the air that he has evidence of that, which he would email to me. I'm sure you'll be shocked to hear that he never emailed me. When we contacted David Bahati after David Cato was killed, Mr. Bahati stuck to his story about the mysterious American funds that turn kids gay in Africa. He told us he hopes police will use the occasion of David Cato's murder to dismantle this supposed network of money to turn kids gay. He said, quote, "It was a peaceful country before the invasion of homosexuality, and to make it a peaceful country again, we want to treat everyone the same under the law. And of course, we want to kill people for being gay because the Americans told us you don't have to be gay if you don't want to be." Now that Russia's moving on to their next big idea, which is they want to go into people's homes and start removing kids from their parents if their parents are gay. Adopted kids, foster kids, even your biological children will be taken away from you if you are gay under the next bill that they're moving. And so it is an interesting question for countries that believe gay people shouldn't have their children stolen. It's an interesting question for other countries in the world as Russia keeps moving on this stuff as to whether or not participating in the Russian-hosted Olympics implies some sort of tacit consent, some sort of tacit approval for what Russia is doing. But what about not tacit approval, not silent approval? What about totally out loud, overt approval of what Russia's doing?
Putin saying, you know what? Don't bring this homosexual propaganda into my country for the Olympics. We believe in one man, one woman marriage. There is no homosexual marriage in Russia.
Which president is the lion of Christianity, the defender of Christian values, the president that's calling his nation back to embracing its identity as a nation founded on Christian values? Those, ladies and gentlemen, are quotes from Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia.
He's taken what used to be our strengths, which is now defaulted into our weaknesses because of Barack Obama, no leadership, and he's making them his strengths, and he's emerging now on the world stage as a newly discovered leader. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you need to rise up. The people here, this is why we rise up.
What Russia's done here with this law is they have expressed the values that we have been advocating for years and years and years. Well, this is exactly what Russia has established as official public policy. So in my mind, we ought to be celebrating this. This is public policy that we've been advocating, and here's a nation in the world that's actually putting it into practice.
Turns out, actually, that the anti-gay American right has been more than just applauding Russia and Vladimir Putin as they enact all these anti-gay laws that they want for us here, too. Turns out that they haven't just been cheering them on. The anti-gay right here has also been helping Russia do this. Right Wing Watch at People for the American Way and the Human Rights Campaign and the Council for Global Equality, they've been trying to ring the alarm bell here in the U.S. about how the American anti-gay group called the National Organization for Marriage has been working with the Russian parliament. They worked with the Russian parliament on passing that country's adoption ban for not just gay people, but for whole countries that are too positive on gay rights. It was June 11th when the Russian parliament passed the propaganda bill, the You Can't Talk About Being Gay bill. That was June 11th. 2 days later, on June 13th, the Russian parliament got a visit from Brian Brown. He's the head of the American anti-gay group, the National Organization for Marriage. This is the Russian language website about the committee testimony that day. Now we will use Google Translate. So here it is, minus the Cyrillic. You can zoom in there to the speech delivered to the Russian parliament by Brian Brown, president of the National Organization for Marriage. And the head of it now, Brian Brown, is now confirming that he was there. He says Russian anti-gay activists invited him to Russia to address lawmakers there about their anti-gay laws, and he did so. They've even posted a Russian summary of his remarks online, which we have now translated. You can see both versions tonight at matoblog.com. Brian Brown wrapped up his remarks to the Russian parliament by saying he thought his visit to Russia will enable the development of this movement around the world. We will band together. We will defend our children and their normal civil rights. Every child should have the right to have normal parents. He also did interviews with the Russian media while he was there, talking about how important it is for the Russian people to fight gay people on marriage and on adoption.
Вы боретесь за усыновление, а это неразрывно связано с браком. И если вы сейчас не защитите свои ценности, боюсь, очень скоро мы увидим совсем плохие перемены во всем мире.
Anti-gay American activists in Russia urging Russia to defend their values and crack down on marriage rights for gay people and also to crack down on kids in gay families. And 5 days after that visit to Russia and his speech to parliament and his interviews on Russian TV, Russia did pass their new adoption ban, targeting not just gay couples, but even straight people from any country that supports gay rights. The bill's Russian sponsor said that even though there are hundreds of thousands of kids up for adoption in Russia, those kids would be better off in an orphanage than living with a mom or a dad who's gay. That passed 5 days after the American National Organization for Marriage went over to Russia and told them to pass it. Now Russia's moving on to the next step. The legislative calendar's been set for them to debate their new bill, which would forcibly remove kids from existing families if the parents in those families are gay. You'll be stripped of your custody rights of your own kids if the Russian government thinks you're gay. The debate on that bill is set to start in February. The Russian Olympics are set to start in February. That should be interesting. Meanwhile, here at home, the same American activist group bringing you a virulently anti-gay Russia. They remain right at the center of American Republican politics. Here's Marco Rubio agreeing to make robocalls for the National Organization for Marriage. Here's Ted Cruz at a National Organization for Marriage-sponsored summit in Iowa, trying to seem presidential. Tomorrow kicks off the Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C., where Paul Ryan and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and Marco Rubio are all scheduled to speak. I actually think Senator Rubio might be bailing on the values voters folks tomorrow. Don't tell them, but we called and asked, and he wouldn't commit. The first day's session has confirmed speeches from Ted Cruz, from Paul Ryan, from Rand Paul, basically the whole 2016 Republican presidential field. Also speaking, first day's session, Brian Brown and the National Organization for Marriage. Because presumably all the Republican 2016 candidates will be pledging their fealty to his organization, just like every major Republican candidate did in the 2012 presidential election. Presumably the Russian in tomorrow's event will have to be in subtitles. The present and future of the Republican Party kissing the ring tomorrow, so everybody will know that they side with the parts of the American conservative movement that have been traveling to Russia, egging them on to step up their campaign to destroy gay people's lives and rip kids out of their families and throw them into orphanages. Because family values. Now it's time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Have a great night.